To the Hi, Adela. Can you just, for the students that are going to be watching this, tell them who you are and what your role is as a director? And we're going to go through some basic questions first for everybody to understand. Then we'll talk about this current situation and how you're coping with it.
So my name is Adela Alvarado, and I have been in the field of early childhood since 1985. Basically, I started taking classes in Foothill College, and at that time, I was actually enrolled in hospitality, so I was taking a lot of classes in travel. But I started working in the child development program that they had back then, and I just loved it. I fell in love. I had like really good mentors. I worked in the infant center as an assistant or a student teacher back then. I didn't know what I was doing. But the teacher there, and I can't remember her name, she was very supportive, helped me a lot. And so then I decided that that's what I was going to major. So I majored in early childhood from San Jose State. And then I worked for a while, about 10 years in Palo Alto as a teacher. And I learned a lot there. It was a small program. And then I decided I wanted to do my master's. So I have my master's in early childhood from San Francisco State. And I've worked for the city of Menlo Park, supervising their after school and preschool programs. And now I have my own center. And now I need to figure how to keep it afloat.
Yeah. Let me back up. What made you decide you wanted to open your own center? What was your motivation?
So after working, so I would say, so I've had my center for about 10 years. So before that, I left direct service for about 2 years, and I worked with Child Care Coordinating Council in San Mateo. Still started working with families, children, and directors, but at a different capacity. And then I got laid off, and that was devastating. And because I've never been out of work, so I was like, what am I gonna do now? At that time, my husband also got laid off. So we were thinking, okay, like, what do we do? Should we open our own business? I was gearing more towards other things, just because I knew the field it's challenging. So I kind of wanted to move, looking at other opportunities. But Children's Learning Cottage came up on Craigslist. That was in 2010. And I walked in and I'm like, this is it. I had a vision, and I'm, why not? I know what it takes. And so we took over Children's Learning Cottage back in 2010.
When you took it over, was the program similar to what you had envisioned running yourself, or did you have to make lots of changes?
Yeah, so we made a lot of changes. So I guess it started, I don't know the complete history, but I think the first 10 years maybe, it was a center for children with special needs. Mm-hmm. Maybe, I'm not quite sure. And then it turned into sort of like a pastor bought the center for his daughter who was interested in her early childhood, but that didn't work out. So all of a sudden he's stuck with a program that was run poorly. So when we took over, I only had 6 children, and they had more like of a religious, maybe like a Christian philosophy a little bit. They didn't know what it was, but it was in pretty bad state.
So it's what I call a cleanup job. Many directors end up in a cleanup job.
But the potential was there.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw. I saw the potential.
Tell me philosophically, what is your philosophy? What do you bring to your programs? What do you believe in?
So I have been studying since I would say 98, the Reggio approach. I did go to Italy. I fell in love with what they were doing, but I'm hardcore, play-based, child-led, philosophy, allowing them to be who they want to be, and incorporating, a little bit of the Ridge approach, child-centered, play-based, that sort of thing.
As you work with your staff, how do you help them philosophically align with each other? Because they're all coming in with their own background, right?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a challenge just because once we are where we are, then, there's a turnover. And so then we have to sort of start from scratch. So, we do a lot of professional development. I mean, you have been great help, and I believe in professional development. And I encourage them to do it on their own because that's part of it. Not a lot of them do it, but I encourage that. We do pay a lot of trainings that align more with our own, philosophy. So it's baby steps, and but it's reading articles, it's role modeling, bringing people from the outside, going to trainings, to schools that I am inspired by. We do tours of other schools, that sort of thing.
Well, and you mentioned role modeling. One of the things that impresses me for you as a director is that you also teach. So you're in the classroom working with teachers.
Yes.
And have that direct interaction with them. So can you talk about what that balance is like as a director? What are your hours?
So it's definitely not easy, but I actually like doing it. It's a bit of I think I've learned how to manage my day, where I can teach. I would say about about 5 hours, and maybe some of that is focused with the children and some of it is out. We have a small program, so I can do that. So it's multitasking, but I like the diversity of it. I can be with the kids and then I can go and do other things. Every day is different, and so I have a schedule, and I'm a stickler with schedules.
Yes, I know.
And routine. So for me, that's important to keep myself. And when I come home, I do a little work if I need to. I put boundaries, but everything gets done. I have an accountant, so I can't do this alone. So I have people that help me too. So I'm not alone.
How many hours per week would you estimate that you work?
I would, now, I try
now.
Yeah, now, I try to leave, so I get to work at 8, I leave at 3, and then I maybe work at, I try to work maybe no more than 2 hours at home. And then on the weekends, I work and try to maybe 4 hours, but no more than that.
So it's about 9 hours a day and 4 to 8 hours on the weekend, it sounds like?
More or less.
So that adds up to quite a bit, longer than a full-time job.
But I think I could do, like on the weekends, I do some of the groceries. I could do that more online but I like to go out and do that stuff. But maybe soon it's all going to be online.
Right. We were just talking about that this morning.
Yeah.
We'll get there. What's your favorite part of the job prior to all of this coronavirus and stuff the last week? But before that, what was your favorite part?
Just the fact that it's different every day. And just the kids are just, they have that sense of like wonder and creativity, and it's creative. It's very creative. Just looking at staff too, how diverse they are, families, how diverse they are, and everybody brings something to our jobs. So I can't say there's one thing. I think I love my school. We have it set up where it's very homey, so I feel at home. We have a nice little back, playground. and just everything we do. I can't say one favorite thing, but yeah, I would say a lot of the diversity that everybody brings.
What's the hardest part of the job?
The hardest part is when I think we have to coordinate when someone's out. I think it's hard when teachers, and I know they don't take it for granted, it's just that they don't plan. And when they call last minute or at 9:00 p.m. and they know not to call me that late, but when they call and say, I can come tomorrow, that is challenging just because I'm trying to like unwind and I can't do anything about it. And then just trying to change a little bit the morning the next day because I have to find coverage. So I think for the most part, that would be the hardest. The other hardest part would be trying to make everybody happy. And, you know.
It's a lot of human need.
Yeah.
The classes that I'm working with, the ones that are in semester long, are currently working on their budgets. And so I'm surprised you didn't mention budget, but we talk a lot about the balancing act between trying to set tuition at a good place and setting staff salaries at a good place. And as you're talking about that, can you talk about some of the considerations without going into specifics, but some of the considerations and what this current time is doing, this week has done in your thinking about budgets?
So, our budget is we budget, I mean, most of all of it comes from parent tuition, first of all. So based on that, we try to balance where we have more full-timers because full-timers obviously pay more, and have a little bit of the part-timers. And so kind of balancing I start working on the budget sometime in the spring. That's when I know more or less, okay, how many children we'll have for the fall. So like right now we know I'm going to have X amount of full-timers, X amount, and I'm going to have this amount of money. Based on this amount of money, then, obviously your rent's going to be my biggest expenses are payroll and rent. So it's going to be after that, where can we, then you have your phone, you have all those things. And then figuring that. So it is pretty, I can say that. And then I budget for professional development, all those things, and you budget for all that. And we stay with it. Again, I'm a stickler again we stay with the budget, and every 6 months we review it and see where we are, and we move from there.
What's that like for you now with the current change? Yeah.
Now it's so challenging because, we are for profit. It's not like we make tons of money. And so a lot of the money also goes to taxes. And so that's what keeps me worried right now, because we don't have a big reserve. And moving forward, that's going to be something that I'm going to have to take in consideration. But nobody plans for these things, maybe a month, but not something, and I have to be very careful with that.
And you've come up with some creative plans to support families and children at home. Can you share those with my class?
So right now, we were open up until Monday of this week. What was that?
I don't even remember. 16th, I think.
Yeah, it was March
16th.
March 16th. So we were open then. And that was really hard when we got the call that everything was going to be shut down. And so for me, it was that uncertainty, like, what am I going to do? What is going to happen to everybody? But the next morning I got up, I do have a good network of colleagues. So we kind of talked about, and then I'm like, okay, like, I feel a little bit better. But it's basically at this point, the first important thing was, how are the staff doing? Are you okay? Are you going to be able to work if we are open? And talking to the state, the health department, talking to licensing, can we open? Can we not open? And, we were going back and forth. And then we had 2 teachers that couldn't work due to health issues. So one has a heart issue. So I'm like, obviously it can work.
This is the joy of doing Zoom conferences. We get to hear some dogs. I'm surprised we haven't heard mine yet. The students will be patient. On my Zoom conference, they all have dogs and children too. You're good, Adela. Bring your pup up. Show us your pup.
They're always there. So it was trying to figure, okay, so I only have three healthy people, two teachers and myself. How many kids are parents feeling comfortable bringing their kids? Are we cleaning as a janitor, so organizing, all that. And then, so it was challenging. Those first 2 days were very challenging. And then always keeping in mind also the parents, like, okay, what do you need? What are your needs? I'm here. I can help you, whatever you need. And then right away, we got into Zoom, reading stories to them every day. We left little packages outside the school and asked the parents to come pick them up for the kids. We've been sending them every day. We send a science activity, an art activity. We send notes to the parents, updating them on the business side. So we have the business side, and then we have the educational component and support to them.
Yeah. It's a very in-depth plan, and I think it's more detailed than most childcare centers have been doing. Yeah. And it does walk that line of trying to figure out, what do you do if you give tuition credits to families? Yeah. How do you pay staff, or do you not pay staff and lay them off? And you brought up earlier, if you had laid them off, would you have staff when you came back, and would you have that staff?
Exactly. So right now, at this point, as we speak, I'm writing a letter to the families. Our agreement, and obviously you have to be sensitive, but at the end of the day, it's a business, and everybody wants their money. My landlord hasn't called me yet. Everybody wants their money, and the janitor has an agreement. I have to give them a month notice. So I don't know what they're going to do when I say, hey, I don't need you next week. Mm-hmm. They have an agreement, so they're going to tell me I have to pay. So I do have an agreement. It states that parents are responsible to pay for school closures and for sicknesses and we don't give credit for vacation. So I might be covered legally, maybe. Obviously, nobody puts coronavirus, and we never thought of that. I'm not covered. Doesn't cover none of this. So I'm hoping that, and I put in the letter that if someone has a hardship, obviously to talk to me. And I mean, we're counting on them to pretty much keep us afloat for a month. And if not, then plan B would be to have staff go on unemployment.
Yeah. It's a really challenging time.
With letting them know that they will have their job back.
Yeah. Right. It's an incredibly challenging time, and because it is so universal, it really changes the way things are happening. And I think you've probably been through points in time where it was very individual, where the challenges were facing your program, and some directors have those. Like maybe they have something that hits their specific program, and they have to figure out what to do for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah. The brownouts. I was thinking about the rolling brownouts, and there go my dogs. You probably were directing around the time rolling brownouts were happening, or working in a program. But as a director, I had to close a program one afternoon because we were without electricity and didn't know why. Mm-hmm. It was in Los Altos, and I had to walk that line of, do I give a tuition credit? Do I figure this out? How do I pay the staff? And you're so close to the margin, and you don't have to tell us specifically, because I know budgets are private.
No, we're close. Yeah, we're very, we just cannot, unfortunately, I don't have, they would have to bail us out.
Yeah, the margins typically are between 2 to 4% profit margins.
There it is. There's Chloe.
There's Chloe. Hi, Chloe. I miss you, Chloe. You're supposed to be in my lap right now. There we go. Everybody has dogs and cats at home. I won't keep you any longer, Adela. Just one more question. What advice would you give somebody becoming a director if they're new and thinking about taking this role on, obviously once we all open again?
The advice is, it's not easy. It's like any other job. I mean, you just need to be patient, focus. I think also, I believe in self-care. I believe in taking care of yourself before you take on like this big responsibility.
Right.
Because you are, at the end of the day, you know, the teachers, they're only worried about a few little things. I'm worried about them, the kids, you know, the money, the everything, calling, you know. So I don't think anybody really understands unless you're on the director's shoes. And everybody's different, but my shoes.
Well, and it sounds like you've got a director support group. You've got a group of directors you turn to.
I do. I mean, I do have to, you know, my friends, you know, if I need to call and like, I'm like, whoa, or you've been very helpful. You know, I think you can, my advice would be to allow others to help you. Like, it's okay to say, you know what, I need help. And it's not a sign of weakness. And I do that a lot. I've always, hey, help me, because I just can't do this. And you can't do it alone. You can't. And I tell my teachers, you cannot do this job alone. Your job, you cannot do it. I can't do this without you, without the parents. So I think it's just a community. And that's how I like to set up the school, as a community.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much, Adela, in the midst of all the chaos you have.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really admire you as a director, and I admire the strength and calmness with which you're approaching a very chaotic, unusual week.
Yeah.
And that shows the sign of a leader, not just a director. I think as directors, we have to be leaders, and you're really leading your staff with the type of attitude you want them to have. And it's admirable.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But I appreciate you too.
I appreciate you doing this interview. So we'll call it a trade.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Adela.
Bye.